Okay, so Wolves play Norwich at Carrow Road this Saturday in a game which I think a few weeks ago everyone would have looked at and gone, yep, easy 3 points going into this kind of 2 game a week hectic Christmas period. And everyone was looking at these results and going, we've got a lot of the top six sides. Brighton are a good side. Burnley are kind of our bogey side. And Norwich was kind of felt like, uh, the easy game, the easy 3 points, right? And look, obviously Norwich is still 19th in the Premier League. But Norwich aren't as bad as I think people thought they were a few weeks ago. Norwich are one of the only two sides to win their last 2 games, and the Premier League is one of those leagues where, especially so early on, where you win 2 games and you're moving up. And obviously they're still 19th, granted, but if they beat us on Saturday, they go out of the relegation battle. They go out of the relegation zone. Um, well, actually, maybe not on goal difference, but they're on 8 points right now. If they win, they go equal with Leeds on 11, and that's 3 wins in a row. And Norwich won't be scared of us. They've just got a new manager. They've got that new manager bounce, and they'll look at us and go, "Yeah, the Wolves are on good form, but we can beat them." And I think as good as we've been, and as good as Bruno Lage has been for us this season, there's a clear way of beating us, which is out pressing us. And I'll go on and look at some Norwich stats in a minute, but we're not unbeatable. As good as we've been, how good of a job Bruno Lage has done to get us in sixth right now and above the sides we're above, there is a way to beat us. And Norwich will look at that, and they are one of the kind of weirdly formed sides in the Premier League. And um, as much as people banter their squad, Timu Puki's got 4 goals. He would be our top goal scorer if he was at the club right now, along with Hanki Chan. They did make some interesting signings in the summer. It's just Daniel Farker refused to play them. So it'll be interesting to see what Dean Smith kind of does in the long term. They beat Southampton last week. Yeah, Southampton. They weren't great in that game, but they got the result. And personally, in this game, I'd kind of just stay unchanged. Obviously, we've got Burnley, right? Yeah, we've got Burnley next week. For me personally, we've got 4 good wingers, and I would completely change them, whoever we play. So I'd play Hwang and Podence against Norwich personally. And that means against Burnley, I'd play Traore and Trincao. That's personally what I'd do. We've got good depth in that position. We might as well rotate. And Norwich aren't a physical side. I'll go and talk about that in a minute. But, their aerial win rate, I think, is the second lowest in the league. So I think you can play Moutinho and Podence and not be concerned. Whereas against Burnley, I'd bring in Adama, I'd bring in Dendonk, I'd probably even bring in Willy Bolly for Roman Sace or Max Kilman or Conor Cody or whatever. Maybe even bring in Marcel, because we're going to have to rotate at some point, right? Especially that Liverpool game at the weekend. But I'd stay unchanged. When you played that well against West Ham, you kind of have to stay unchanged. Albeit, we all said this against Everton when we played really well and ended up losing anyway, so who knows. But in terms of Norwich, obviously, Tim Krul's kind of having an okay season, but it's kind of hard to judge a goalkeeper for a relegated side when they face the amount of shots they do. Um, Obviously, by the way, these stats obviously include Daniel Farker's Norwich, right? But it still shows them, right? Like, as good as I think Dean Smith was a decent manager and he's a better manager than Daniel Farker, but they're not going to turn into like world class players overnight. In terms of shots taken, shots on target percentage, they're bottom in every metric. And it's probably because they don't have an outstanding number 10, right? When you lose Emi Buendia and you don't really bring in a number 10, you're gonna lose that output. Miller Rashitska hasn't really hit form yet. They do have interesting central midfielders. Billy Gilmore, Norman's had a really good season this year. Lees Malou's interesting, but none of those guys are attacking midfielders. The only guy they've got really is Kieran Dowell. Um, so I don't. That's the one issue I'd look at Norwich with Dean Smith. I can't really see where that creativity comes from on that side. They don't have a Jack Grealish that Dean Smith can kind of just ride off of. So, but Norwich, they're not a big shot side. Again, when you look at key passes, progressive passes, they're in the bottom 2 for all these sort of metrics. And look, this is what Dean Smith's been brought in to improve, obviously, but it's not going to work overnight. And obviously, we would have rather played Norwich before the West Ham game. But maybe now Dean Smith probably hasn't had time to fully make changes. Maybe it's a good time to play them. In terms of pressures, this is the one thing that does concern me a little bit. But this is mainly Daniel Farker's thing. The one thing I would say, they're 5th for pressures right now in the Premier League. And they're a bit low in successful pressures. And when you look at the amount of their pressures that actually work as a percentage, they're actually bottom. So it's not like they're a good pressing side. They just do it a lot, right? They just run at you a lot and it doesn't really work a lot of the time. But they are high in that metric. But the one thing I would say is, you look at Aston Villa down here. That's Dean Smith's side. I know Dean Smith's technically Norwich manager right now, but Aston Villa is probably more representation of his football, and he's not a pressing manager. He never has been. He's always been 4-3-3. That's what he played last week for them when they beat Southampton. I think they had 32% possession in that game. So although they are a good pressing side, mainly that's under Daniel Farke, I don't think that's something we should be massively concerned about when we play them this week, because it is Dean Smiths Norwich, and they're not. He's never really been a pressing manager, so unless he's completely changed his philosophy, they're probably not going to press us that much. Same with possession. Even under Daniel Farke, they had the fourth lowest possession in the Premier League. You know, they're down there. Rafa's Everton, Steve Bruce's Newcastle, Dyche's Burnley, and you know, I know Dean Smith's only been there 2 games, but this hasn't changed. If anything, it's got lower. So this will probably be one of those games like West Ham, like Everton, where we have high possession, we can pass it around the back. You know, Connor Cody's going to have like 70, 80 touches. It just depends whether we can have that bit of creativity. And that's probably why I wouldn't play Adama, by the way. You don't need Adama in these sort of games. You probably don't really need Hwang either. You could probably play Trincao there, but you need a goal threat, right? And you can't really drop Hwang right now. Well, you can, but I don't think Bruno Lage will. And then in the air as well, this is another thing as well. Why I'd play Daniel Podence, why you play Ait Nouri, why you play Moutinho. In terms of aerial win rate, like I said earlier, the second bottom. They're there with Southampton and Everton, and sides we've done well against before. And we're not great in there. We're kind of just a middling side in terms of like being an aerially dominant side. But Norwich aren't a big side, you know, bar Grant Hanley. I can't really think of anyone that's above 6 foot, especially, you know, Dean Smith's brought Billy Gilmore back in. He's brought Miller Rashitska back in. They're not big guys either. I wouldn't be concerned about Norwich in the air. And we've got to prioritise. You know, Burnley are kind of the opposite of Norwich in certain ways. And you want Willy Bolly in that game. You want Adama. You want Leander Dendoncker. So I think Bruno Lage has got to pick and choose his squad in this game. And I think he will. And look, Norwich obviously have some threats, and they'll want to get out of that relegation zone. But equally, if we win this game, we're 1 point behind fourth. And then with Burnley midweek, we could be in the top 4 by the time we play Liverpool. So as much as Norwich need this win, so do we. And we're better, and we've got a better manager. We've got a more stable manager who's been in the job for a bit longer. We've got a more coherent style of play. We're better in the air. We're better possession side. They are a good pressing side, but that was under Daniel Farke. There's not really anything. Tim Krul's having an okay season, but there's nothing about Norwich which scares me, and what then that makes me think this 11 wouldn't be able to beat Norwich, albeit is at Carrow Road. But Carrow Road's quite a small stadium, right? It's quite a small pitch, so I don't think that's me. I don't know. Is that a good thing? I don't really know if that's a good thing or not. But there's nothing about this game which scares me. I think, if anything, I'd probably be a bit scared if Daniel Farke was there because he's a pressing coach, but I'm pretty confident we'll win this game. It feels like we are going to batter someone at some point. I don't know if that'll be Norwich, but plus we had a good record against Norwich against Nuno as well when Nuno was in charge. So I'm pretty confident we'll win this game. I think we'll win it 2-3-0. If you enjoyed the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel. There'll be a match for you after the game and for all the Christmas period games. So yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and yeah, peace.